white pieces. We've got Alireza Firouzja. Now the first one, a confident hold in that. He starts with the queen's pawn opening, and this time no French, but the London.
C5 Hikaru. I played 2 Londons in a recent Blitz tournament, and I won both games with the second move C5. But Hikaru chooses the Magnus approach. If you're going to London me, I don't know what was that face from Hikaru. I guess Alireza would have played knight to F3 against Magnus. That's what he did. They had a symmetrical position. But he goes for this instead. It's funny that Hikaru made a face. It's a 4th move. 3.5 moves have been played, right? Like, what could he have been expecting? But we're going to see a trade of a bishop, the development of the queen, and then we're going to find out.
It's the book of expressions of Hikaru Nakamura, about 999 of them. I'm not sure which one that was, but don't read too much into it. Still early days here. I've got a theory going on here. Now, we saw Alireza play the French. Then he moves on to the London. Do you think he's doing a bit of a world tour on his final day in Paris right now? We're going to see the Italian, maybe the Spanish next?
Yeah, why not? I'm really flabbergasted. Like, what? And by the way, I don't know if his heart rate monitor is correct. It was started at 130, it went down to 90, it went to 114, now it's at 108. Hikaru's is just rapidly dropping. He's super chill and relaxed. But what is he thinking about here on the 4th move? He doesn't want to take this bishop? Okay, he does. Pawn takes. Interesting. This is a strange move. You control more of the center. You voluntarily double your pawns. But why would you do this?
And maybe that's what took Hikaru by surprise. Alireza's offer of the bishop trade early on, which does give black the ability now to push that e-pawn eventually and maybe get rid of that second pair of bishops as well off the board. You want to land your bishop on d6. If you're Hikaru Nakamura, first he consolidates with the other pawn. This is already imbalanced with what Alireza has done with his pawn formation at the center. Expecting him to develop it. This is surprising, right? He walks into this, goes pawn takes bishop, voluntarily creates this formation, and now goes into a think.
He might be considering something like pawn to h4, or like, yeah, something a little bit more aggressive. There are some variations where you can just start a kingside pawn attack. You can play like knight to e2. You don't have to always go knight f3. Like, of course, you ask a beginner here, play a few moves. Knight out, short castle, etc. Push in the middle. But you can maybe just play it very crazy. There's a guy named Arjun Erigaisi who was here, and he was also a Final Four finisher last year, and he just loves to push his h-pawn in every possible London.
And Arjun Erigaisi's road in Paris was ended by Hikaru Nakamura right here. Now e6 is on the board, looking at that bishop development. Is Alireza going to simply continue taking out his knight, getting his king to safety? Will he go wild with Levy's h4 at some point? Or will he bring out the queen to attack b7? He takes the more cautious approach.
If this was the bullet championship, maybe you throw in a h and g pawn push, but it's only the second game of the 3rd place match. You're a little bit worried something could go wrong. White's moves are very easy. White has to castle. White has to bring the rook on the left side to the c file, because that's the file you tried to open. And then you try to push your a and b pawns, go to the black queen side. Maybe you jump in your king's knight further into the middle with knight e5. He's only thinking because he has a lot of different choices.
It's the problem of plenty, and at the time too little. He needs to take those choices quickly. If there was one big takeaway from Alireza's match against Magnus Carlsen, that clock was not his best friend, and he strikes in the center immediately, breaks away with e4, enough defenses off those pawns if there is a trade. Is Hikaru going to maintain tension here? That would give Alireza the option to push that e-pawn even further, dislodging a key defender of the king side.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. And if Hikaru captures now with the pawn, he would be undoubling the pawns there, right? Alireza would suddenly have a very strong center, but he would free up squares in the center for his knight. In a lot of these positions, we saw yesterday with Denis Lazovic, he keeps the tension. Hikaru yesterday was expanding in the center like this, and Denis would, almost like a martial art, he would just dodge and then zip out of the way. Right now, Hikaru's baiting it. Like, white could push forward and attack the knight, but pawns don't go backwards. And there it is. It's a very committal decision. Undevelopment from Hikaru, but what's next for Alireza here? Maybe now you throw in one of these pawn to h4s.
Pawns don't go backwards, but the knights definitely can. And you said h4. I think Hikaru wants to go h5 next. I'm looking at that f5 spot for the black knight to reroute itself to. Maybe we'll have the analysis board up and just show that path, Levy, where the knight eventually can land on h6 if you go h5 at the right moment and plant itself in a beautiful f5 spot.
Exactly.
He's looking for green pastures here.
Let me just castle. Now suddenly, first of all, there's even stuff like this.
Ooh.
I mean, you can just totally throw principles out the window. You commit the king here, and suddenly an attack begins. Hikaru has played knight h6 straight away. He is completely baiting. Bishop takes knight. There are some positions where you can allow something like this, right? You know, maybe they like something like this. And then the game is opening up. There's going to be a rook coming down this line. If you castle, it looks very dangerous. You now have two pawns that can walk down this way. But Tanya, he also could have played patient. He could have played h5 first. a3 was also a little bit of a slow move in this position. Alireza could have just immediately gone for an h-file attack, but he probably didn't want Hikaru to mirror him. But then there's all sorts of crazy stuff that could happen. You can even bring your rook around and attack this pawn. Regardless, a major moment here. Let's go back to the live position. Will Alireza be capturing this knight? I mean, it's a big decision, but if he doesn't do it, this knight's coming right here.
This is provocation game by Hikaru Nakamura. He's saying, I'm willing to take the double pawns, but I get the G line. That H pawn, if it is doubled up, will march up the board, adding to the firepower on the attack on the G file right now. It gets a question mark, but again, the ability to take difficult practical decisions. Hikaru is posing those questions to Alireza. Not easy to grab that knight, especially with the black king also ready to find safety on the left flank if needed. Bishop takes knight. Even if it's the best move, it's not an easy one for a human to make.
No, absolutely not. You make a move like that. He has gone for it. He has gone for it. Alireza does find the best move. His dynamic understanding is very strong. Now, will he castle? I actually don't think so. I think right now it's better for white maybe to keep the king in the middle of the board. You know that black is now going to slide the rook over, targeting the g-pawn. It would be a little bit like waving the flag, you know, in front of the bull before it charges down. Maybe it's better for him to keep the king exactly where it is.
Keep it flexible.
And there you go. That's the commentator's curse. He's like, Levi, Hikaru, both of you have terrible ideas, and I'm just going to castle. Go ahead, do your worst. Rook on the g-file. Why do you think I'm afraid of that?
A fearless Firouzja is what this feels like. And Hikaru's slightly surprised with this decision as well, Levi. He is wondering now, is it time already to put that rook on the g-file, or maybe march up the board with that h-pawn first? He knows that eventually there is a potential of a hook on the g3 square when the white pawn lands there. Hikaru is smelling the dynamics in this position, and he knows that this is something to fight for. Looking at the opening outcome, if you had to pick a color to play this from, white or black?
I gotta say white, right? I feel like you are also, you know, positionally inclined, but even if you're tactically inclined here, I feel like the h-pawns for black are a little bit weak. It almost feels like if black attacks you, they're only going to be further weakening their own position. But I'm very bad when I can't really push forward, and those center pawns are completely locked. I think at some point, Alireza is going to have to move his knights back and get more pawns into the game. And I do think we will be seeing king to h1. Just put the king on the same line as three different pawns, because you know it's never going to open up.
King to h1 was a move that Hikaru employed yesterday in his semi-finals match. Did not go too well. Will Alireza go for this plan today? We'll find out. I want to pull up the analysis board because there is something I would like to highlight in this position. Two plans from the white knight. And keep an eye on this, everyone watching. One of them, as you mentioned, knight goes back, you push f4, f5, throw the entire party. And we'll get to this shocking decision that Hikaru's just made. But this was the second plan I wanted to highlight, which is on the board. That other knight is rerouting itself to a beautiful h5 square on the other corner, closer to the black king. Things about to get very spicy on the right flank.
And if this knight lands here, it can't be removed. At some point, black needs to move this pawn, make a pawn break, and target the knight just like that. It is possible, and even then, you don't ever get rid of the knight. Like, the knight can always stick around, you'll end up trading it. And after all this opens up, it is black who is left with quite a poor pawn structure, where he will suffer for the remainder of this game. Once he starts pushing these pawns, his king in the corner is going to be weak. So let's pause here, go back to the live position. What has happened is Hikaru has shuffled his king and rook to the corner. Alireza actually could very well do the same, as hilarious as that looks. But overall, I think white is going to apply pressure. Yeah, he's going to put his knight exactly as you said, Tanya. And I mean, black is struggling here.
I'm actually really liking his chances right now for Alireza. Now Hikaru switches attention to the other side. This move isn't as aggressive as it looks. It's also prophylactic, just stopping an expansion of the B pawn, moving up, making sure that the counterplay on the left flank remains under control. But for white, the plan is clear. He does make a waiting move, puts a king on that G2 spot. I'm still expecting the white knight to eventually land on H5 and then find a way for the queen to get into the game.
Tough to make a move here for black. What Hikaru's doing there with his pawn is pushing basically the only thing that can move. Now he's out of moves. It feels like you've controlled Alireza's pawns on the left side of the board, but, well, you kind of haven't. Like, he can push them anyway at a certain moment. He might trade, and then his queen and rooks will open up and target the pawns on the left side, but he doesn't have to do that. He can continue to make improving moves. That move
is not setting up for the next game. That comes with an idea, Levy, right now. He is hinting at the H-pawn moving up the board, and I'm trying to understand what happens then. What about after that? Yes, you get H4. Well, it couldn't have been played in the previous move, and I want to highlight that with the G3 pawn pinned by the black rook. Black having two attackers, bishop and queen lined up, you needed a defense. And you know what? Your opponent plays on one flank, Hikaru Nakamura strikes in the center. Textbook stuff.
Yeah, rook h1 is a strange move, but it was intended potentially to protect the pawn should it have ever been pushed. I feel as though Hikaru is playing very confidently in a rather unpleasant position. It's not lost or anything, it's just a little bit unpleasant. But because he's playing confidently, Firouzja's in the tank again, just like yesterday, in a good position where he might spend a little bit too much time. He's already down nearly a minute.
Alireza's clock takeaway wasn't just for him. Hikaru saw that entire match unfold as well. And he knows he needs to play the clock game against Alireza. He has to use that as a weapon against him. And this is where inaccuracies start happening. He's touching the 4-minute mark, comes down with that knight, which was supposed to land to the other side at a more aggressive spot for Alireza. You start getting the feeling that these last two moves by him, the king shift, the rook move, just hasn't gone his way.
It was easy to just kind of gallop the knight to the right side of the board, and that was the best move. But you do have to wonder, like, what was he going to do next? Whereas Hikaru's plan almost feels a lot easier. He's breaking up the queen side. There's his pawn, there's his queen, and now the previous plan of advancing his A pawn all the way has controlled Alireza's position over there, and now he's got a little bit of a weakness. And at some point here with white, you're thinking, I had a good position, like, what happened?
And you're not coming up with any answers to that question. And the point is that sure, Alireza set up the idea of the H-pawn moving forward, but that left us baffled because even if you get H4, you're not seeing the way ahead. That pawn isn't marching up the board. You don't have knight to G5 tactical jumps anytime soon. So where was this plan leading up to? And at some point, Alireza might have to accept his mistake and start repositioning that rook.
Yeah, what do we play here with what?
Defend the pawn?
I wouldn't. Just like, I can take my pawn on b2, then I move my rook, then I take his pawn, then I attack all his other pieces. But I would probably slide my queen up one square. I would play queen to d2.
Hey, that does defend the pawn,
that
though,
does.
Levy.
I was thinking of attacking the other one, though, which I'm not even sure you want to capture. Like that h6, and okay, I mean...
On the board.
I mean, it's a move. You had to do something, but 251 to 415. Hikaru gives away the bishop, which Alireza does not capture.
And that knight has done a bit of back and forth right there. Lands one more time on the f4 spot, leaving d4 tender for white. Hikaru not rushing with the capture at the center of the board. What Alireza wants to do next is push his h-pawn to ask Hikaru to make a decision with the bishop that's just landed on g5.
And Alireza's next move after this could be maybe attacking the bishop. He could take the bishop. At some moment, there will be a white rook that moves to the middle, we promise. But for now, they're on their home squares. This is not how you should play chess, okay? They get to get away with it. But at some point, you will move a rook to C or B or E, and then the board's going to really open up.
Do not try this at home. Both rooks landing exactly where they started with. One hasn't made a move. That's the bottom left one. The right one castled and came back to H1. Knight F4 has been the last move by Alireza Firouzja. And Hikaru Nakamura, how does he continue? Does he take on D4? Does he bring his own rook into the game?
Taking on D4 is a major decision. You do win a pawn. As far as I can see, that move wins a pawn for now, but you open up a lot more problems. Now, by the way, Tanya, time advantage, gone. Just evaporated. 1.5 minutes, right? And you can't bluff in this format if you don't have a good move in mind. And he just said, just move.
You know, these are the two speed chess superstars of the world. Levy, having seen them, I don't even know how many times, commentated on them, and I'm talking about you right now, You know, you've made many videos on them as well. You probably know them better than they know themselves.
They would disagree with that.
All right, but my question is, who has the better mouse skills if this goes into hyperbullet?
Oh, it's undoubtedly Alireza. I think Alireza and Nihal are, like, if you give both of them like 15 seconds, then it's just a chaotic position. Like, it's not like one person is completely lost and running away from checkmate. What has happened here, though, is Hikaru spent a minute and a half, and he's gone passive. He's gone lockdown mode. Alireza is putting a lot of pressure here. This is like when one fighter is covering up, you know, and the other kind of has the free pass to attack. But which pawn do you take, and do you even take a pawn? You can take the center pawn or the H pawn or none of them.
So Hikaru did pick up the pawn at the center, went up a pawn, and we saw the H pawn moving up. We saw a trade, the queen landing on a spot where it's hitting 3 pawns. The F7 one, which has just been defended by Hikaru's rook. There's an H pawn hanging, there's a central pawn hanging. Now I want to point out, queen takes d4, that central pawn would have lost another one. The e5 would have gone. Instead, he goes for h6, and we see an immediate break. And suddenly, Hikaru's rooks start to make a lot of sense in the position.
And the position's dynamically back to equal with both guys having 2 minutes here. Really, like I expect the experience factor to work in Hikaru's favor, but in scramble mode, with 20 seconds on the clock, if it's still complicated, you got to back the younger player. Now, I will say there was a position there where the advantage was quite big for white, like a move or two ago, and it actually involved white not taking a pawn. Neither pawn. He needed to just keep applying the pressure. He played the human move. Now apparently black has a very slight advantage. Tanya, we're about to watch like pawns fall off like dominoes.
We're about to watch the pawns fall off and potentially a king fall off as well. There are attacks in the making here. You know, you could take that f6 pawn. I am eyeing the white knight jumping onto g5 with h7 being something you need to watch out for if you are Hikaru Nakamura right now, who's touching the 1 minute 50 second mark after this last move. Alireza hinting at the opening up of the E line with E6 as a clear target.
I could not stress this enough. This is absolutely 50-50. 1.5 minutes each. Queens, rooks, a horse, and a bunch of pawns with kings hiding away in the corner because they're terrified. This is anybody's game.
You can run, you can't hide, because the attack is coming regardless, Levy, in this position right now. And you can feel the tension on Hikaru. He goes below the 1 minute 30 second mark. He's willing himself to make a move right now. No easy decisions. Queen takes pawn is hanging, which would also eyeball the f2 pawn. But that just is a very gutsy move to make. Apart from other things, you're relying the white rook to the 7th rank, and Hikaru's like, make a move, man.
This is typical. And this is the last couple of years. He's now gone under a minute, and he has grabbed the pawn. Honestly, he needed to will himself into this decision because now the queen feels offside, confirmed by VAR. If you play pawn takes pawn here with white, the rook is open, the knight jumps in. You feel like you're getting checkmated, but you're not.
What Hikaru is relying on after pawn takes pawn is to capture it with the rook, hit the white queen, defend the pawn. Right now it's 7 versus 6. Hikaru is up a pawn. The a3 pawn is hanging as well. Where is Alireza finding his counterplay, his initiative against the black
And let's not forget, I think the reason he spent time is because of that move. It's because of that move, and now rook takes pawn, attacking the knight, threatening mate. The queen zips in for Hikaru. Now if pawn takes pawn is played in the middle of the board, plays knight takes pawn.
And that's a massive blunder by Hikaru. He misses that opportunity right now, and there have to be tactics. That bar indicates that there is a knockout move in this position, Levy.
And he sacrifices the rook! He's doing it! He's doing the thing!
We got the rook in!
Oh my goodness, if king takes rook, rook check, and Hikaru just with the eyebrows there, it's over. This is a knockout punch. The queen and rook swarm, Alireza completely missed this, and he resigns!
That is game over, and it had to be a rook sacrifice with Levy on the call right there. Gets a brilliancy in. A king takes rook would have ended in a checkmate with the other rook joining the party. And just like that, Hikaru Nakamura takes the lead.
I mean, you can't script this any better. It's not scripted for what it's worth. What a moment there. You could see that Hikaru was sensing those tactics along the second rank. And it's crazy because 2 of his pieces were barely participating. But that's all he needed. The queen went in. That's why he went into the tank. Went down 30 seconds on the clock, but that almost baited Alireza a little bit into playing a knight attack. Hey, this is chess. I mean, you have to find resources for yourself, but a major part of the game is also spotting them for the opponent. And a rook sacrifice out of the blue that just ends the game wasn't there. By the way, remember yesterday, the first Hikaru-Dennis game, they both overlooked just like a 1-move win with knight jumping in and then the queen infiltration. Like, it happens. But if one person spots it, that person is likely going to win.